Alright guys, BLM here back with a new video. In this video we'll be doing another video in my Dreamcasting series. This time we'll be doing Dreamcasting Survivor Second Chance. So if you don't know what this Dreamcasting series is, essentially I have already done videos for a whole bunch of Survivor themes where I talk about who I think production would cast in the case that they ever did an all-star season with those themes. However, here for my Dreamcasting series, this will be mostly about who I personally would want cast on seasons with these themes. And I actually found this one really interesting, the Second Chance one here, because I felt like with Second Chance, it led to results that were radically different from what I think would actually happen. Because on my Ideal Legends cast, I feel like they can get most of the people that I would want them to get, and I think they would get them. However, with Second Chance, I feel like it's a completely different story because there's so many people I would like to see play Survivor again that I just don't feel like are very likely returnees at this point. So at the end of the video where we compared the Dreamcast to my cast I put together for my Second Chance video, it's a radically different cast, and I think it'll be really fun to compare the two. So just like my other Survivor videos, we'll be going through every season by season, talking about who I think are contenders from that season, and talk about the people who I obviously put on. Now let's start off with Survivor Borneo, and I actually didn't put anyone from Survivor Borneo, which I was actually kind of surprised by. I did obviously consider Colleen and Gretchen, but for me the main consideration was Greg, and I actually didn't put him on, and that's because, to be honest, it's a pretty tough field. This is something that I really found difficult, was just how tough of a field this was to put this cast together, because there were just so many people I would like to see back, and obviously Second Chance is the theme of people who have only played once at this point and have never won, and that's a pretty big pool of people. So I would like to see Greg back. I just didn't feel like he fit the cast, so he didn't make my cut. Didn't consider anyone from the Australian Outback, as, I mean, everyone's come back from that season. And even then, to be honest, I don't think anyone would have made it anyway. But then we have Survivor Africa, and here I had one consideration that did not make the cut, which was Clarence. I would really like to see Clarence on the cast, but I feel like there was one person in particular that kind of took his spot. But I did put two women from this cast on the Second Chance cast. I think both these women are actually kind of likely for a Second Chance cast at this point. Not necessarily that they'll make it on, but I think they'll definitely be in consideration if they were to do a Second Chance too. So first person is T-Bird, and I think T-Bird, one of the main reasons I would like to see her back is just because how passionate she is for the game, how passionate she is with the Survivor community, and you know she just wants to have one more shot at the game, and I do think she would do pretty well. I mean, considering she can probably hold up in physical challenges, I would assume at this point, and then also I think she's just very good socially, even though I think she can get grating at points. I do think for the most part people like her, and I think it would be really fascinating to see how she would play again, especially considering she was ahead of her time even on Survivor Africa. I think she was way ahead of her time strategically at that point, so I think it'll be interesting to see her play again now. And I also put on Kelly Goldsmith, who, if I remember right, I'm pretty sure I accidentally forgot about talking about her in my Second Chance video the first time around, but I would like to see Kelly Goldsmith back. I think another one that was probably ahead of her time back then, where she was willing to flip on her alliance, where, I mean, mind you, they cast her out, but still, she was willing to flip against Lex and try to orchestrate a rebellion against him, and couldn't do it, was one number short. But I think seeing her play again nowadays would also be pretty interesting. Now from Survivor Marquesas, I had a couple considerations. I really considered Nalia, and for me it was between Nalia and Kelly. I went with Kelly, though I wouldn't be upset at an Nalia return either. I would really like to see her play again. And I really considered John Carroll as well, but he just didn't make the cut. Again, there were just too few spots. But the one person I had to have back from Marquesas, it had to be Sean Rector. I would love to see Sean Rector play again. Again, I think really what made me remember how great Sean Rector was I did recently rewatch some stuff from Survivor Marquesas, and through doing that, it really makes you remember how much Sean Rector pops out on the screen, how much he is just such a dynamic character, and how fun he is on TV, how talented he is. And I think seeing him on Survivor again would be really fun. He easily made my cast. Didn't consider anyone from Thailand. I don't need to see anyone from Thailand ever again. From the Amazon, the only person I really considered was Dina, and even then, I'm fine. I don't think she's a necessity to come back. She didn't make my cut. Pearl Islands, I did consider Burton. I wouldn't mind seeing Burton play again, but again, at the end of the day, didn't make the cut. There were just not enough spots. Then we move on to Vanuatu, and there were a lot of people I considered here. I considered Twyla, but she didn't make the cut. I considered Sarge. I think a Sarge return would be kind of funny. I think Sarge was a really fun character, but at this point, I'm okay with not seeing Sarge again. Someone that I really wanted to put in the cast and just didn't make the cut was Rory. I think Rory is a really, really fun character. And someone that is never coming back at this point. But again, on my Dreamcast, he was very close to making it on. But the one person I did put on from this cast is someone that will never play Survivor ever again, but I would love to see it, and that is Julie Berry. Obviously, she's never going to play Survivor again because of her relationship with Jeff Probst, and I don't think that they would allow her to play Survivor at this point, but I think it would be fascinating to see her play. Again, she was another one that was ahead of her time at that point, where she was playing this like flirt strategy, the strategy that Parvati becomes known for playing in obviously Cook Islands and Micronesia, and I think Julie playing again now would be just as interesting. So Julie made my cut. From Palau, I did consider Kobe, and I considered James Miller, because Kobe is someone that I think could come back and play a pretty decent game. He seems to be someone that's still up with the modern strategy and that sort of stuff, but didn't make the cut. And then James Miller is he's just a great character. He really is. But again, the field is really tough. He didn't make it, but I did put on Ian. I talked about this in the past, how I think Ian's one of the best players to never win, or at least one of the best players to have only played once and never win. And he's someone that production's been wanting back, but can't get back. But again, for my Dreamcast, he would be on there. He made the cut. Now from Guatemala, and I have a lot of considerations from Guatemala. I think Guatemala is a very underrated season. I think it has so many fun characters. It just sucks that I wasn't able to fit more people onto the cast here, but I did consider Rafe. I think Rafe would be interesting. Obviously, another one of the best players to never win. I've only played once, but didn't make the cut. I considered Cindy, as that would just be fun, but I think really I would save her for like a Blood versus Water season. Gary would be really great. Gary Hawkins was a really fun character on that season. Didn't make the cut. Amy O'Hara would have been really fun. Again, didn't make the cut. And then also Brian Corden was someone I considered. But the one person I did put on the cast, I would not have a Dream Survivor cast where this person is eligible without having this person on, and that is Judd. The fact that Judd hasn't been brought back is a complete travesty, and I know why he wasn't brought back. I mean, production didn't like him. He would get into arguments with Probst and that sort of stuff, but how do you not have Judd on a Survivor season again? It would just be incredible. So I had to have Judd on my cast. Now from Panama, I did consider Courtney Merritt because that would be a train wreck, but she didn't make the cut. I also considered Austin Carty, as I feel like Austin Carty is kind of one of these forgotten figures in Survivor history, even though he is technically the first person to ever make a fake idol. And I do think he was someone that had some interesting strategies on season, even though a lot of them didn't really work out. But he didn't make the cut, but I had to put Shane Powers. I mean, Shane Powers, again, another one like Judd. A travesty that he hasn't been brought back. A travesty that he wasn't voted in during Survivor Second Chance, but he made my cut easily. From Cook Islands, I considered two people, and I was very surprised that both these didn't make the cut. Again, it was just the male field especially. It was very, very tough because like I felt like with this, I tried to make the field filled with people that I don't feel like are going to be on an actual season. We do have a couple exceptions, but for the most part, like I don't see any of the people that are on my cast having a large chance of actually being on a returnee cast at this point. And because there were just so many like wacky characters that I wanted to bring back, but just they didn't make the cut. And that includes Cowboy. I think Cowboy would be fascinating to see play Survivor again. It would be just really, really funny. But I already have Shane, we have Judd, we have some people we'll be talking about a bit later. It's like I just didn't feel like there was room for Cowboy, but I would love to see Cowboy play again. And the same thing goes for Nate. I think Nate is someone that I legitimately would like to see play. Again, like Cowboy would be more so for like joke sort of reasons, but I would legitimately like to see Nate play again. And I don't think it'll ever happen, but I do think seeing him play would be pretty fascinating. And then moving on to Fiji, same thing with Dreams. I think Dreams is someone that would be really interesting to see play Survivor again. He didn't make my cut because, again, the field was very tough, but I think Dreams would have a very interesting arc for return. I also did consider Alex Angarita from Survivor Fiji because I think he's another one of these more forgotten figures at this point, but someone that was pretty fun on the show. Got a lot of airtime, was a pretty strategic guy, but again, just didn't make the cut. From Survivor China, the only person I considered here was Dave Cruiser. Again, another like wacky character, but someone that just didn't make the cut just due to how limited the number of spots were. Now from Survivor Micronesia, and I only considered 2 people, and both of them made the cut. So here we have one of the more likely returnees, I feel like, out of the people that I did put on my cast, and that is Natalie Bolton. And again, she's been in consideration for like every All-Star season since then. Has been very close to making it on a few times. I think Natalie Bolton should be on All-Star season, and she easily made my dream cast here. I think she'll be really fun. And the other person was Tracy Hughes Wolf, and she's someone that's never going to play Survivor again. I think production's completely forgotten about her, but I do think she's probably one of the best pre-merge boots in the history of the show. I do think she was like a scrappy underdog. I think she was so close to pulling off that Aussie move in the pre-merge, and that would have been really massive for that season. And even before that, she was able to get Joel to pretty much do whatever she wanted. I do think she had a lot of skill for the game, and I think seeing her play again would be really fun. From Survivor Gabon, I had a few considerations, but none of them made the cut. I mean, I considered Ace. I think Ace is someone that, if you asked me by the time of like Heroes vs. Villains, I would have wanted to see Ace play again. But I think now, I think there's just other options that are more interesting to me. And I also considered both Crystal and Kenny, and I think both of them would be really fun on the return, especially Kenny. I think Kenny would be even more likely of a returnee and also just more fun as a returnee, but neither of them really made the cut for me. Now from Tocantins, I considered 2 people. One of them made the cut. I considered Taj and I considered Aaron, and I put Aaron on the cast. Now, this was tough because I feel like both of them are people that I would like to see play again. However, for me personally, I feel like Taj, she always seemed to not really care too much about the actual game itself. I feel like a lot of that comes from the fact that she was already obviously well off before the season. She was already rich. She had no real reason to be there outside of to prove herself. And I feel like on return, I don't feel like she would be one playing as hard as Aaron would be. But also, I don't feel like she has as much to prove anymore. So I picked Aaron, though, I mean, to be fair, now Aaron's married to like a hockey player, right? And I'm pretty sure she's well off. So, I mean, I don't know how incentivized Aaron is to play super well either. But either way, I personally went with Aaron. I mean, you could put Taj on there too. I wouldn't be upset. I mean, really, they were very, very close. It was 1-2. But I feel like for me, in terms of like story and stuff, I would rather see an Aaron return. Again, Taj would be better for like a Blood versus Water with Eddie George. I think that would be fantastic. But for Second Chance, I think Aaron would be a more interesting option. Now from Samoa, I did consider a few people, but none of them made the cut. I mean, I really considered Shambo. I think Shambo is another one of these big characters that would be really fun on the return. I think the biggest problem for Shambo for me is that she wouldn't play the game strategically. And I feel like Shambo's the type of person that will never play the game strategically. And I feel like we already have people here like Judd that kind of fits that mold, and I would rather see Judd return. So Shambo didn't make the cut. I considered Dave Ball and I considered John Fincher. I think both those would be fun returnees, but again, just didn't make my cut here. From Survivor Nicaragua, I considered a few people. One person made the cast. I considered Chase Rice, who I still stand by. I think he played a great game in Nicaragua, but do I need a return? Probably not. Sash would be interesting, but not really a necessity. Consider Holly. Holly is someone I really considered. I really wanted to put Holly on the cast, but it just didn't fit. I feel like there's a couple other people that I would rather see than her. Nyanka, I think it would be fun, especially if she's more willing to play the game this time, or more willing to stick out in the game this time, like not quit the game. But again, barely missed the cut for me. Alina, I think, is someone that had potential in her game, but again, not really even close to making the cut here, though. But I did put on Marty. I've talked about this multiple times. I love Marty. I think Marty is someone that it's travesty he was never brought back. I mean, he's still kind of in the running, even up to Game Changers, but it's like, I think at this point his time's probably done, which is a shame, but I personally would still love a Marty return, though it's probably getting less likely as time moves forward. Now from Redemption Island, I consider 2 people. One person made the cut, and the person that didn't make the cut was someone that I think is an underrated player overall, and that is Steve Wright. I think Steve Wright would be a pretty interesting returnee. I mean, not as interesting as a lot of these other people that I did put on the cast. I do think Steve Wright is just an underrated player in general, and he was definitely in consideration. But the one that I did put on the cast was Stephanie Valencia, and I've talked about this in the past as well. I was a big Stephanie Valencia fan on Redemption Island. I would love to see her play again. I voted for her in the Second Chance voting. I would have loved her to be on Second Chance, but it was in the cards. For my dream Second Chance cast, I did put her on. Now moving on to South Pacific, and I put one person for South Pacific on, but there were a few other considerations. Considered Christine. I think she would be fun on return. Didn't make the cut. Albert is someone I think would be interesting. I mean, while he wasn't the most dynamic character by any means, I think he's definitely a big gamer. And I think seeing him return would be interesting, but again, didn't make the cut. And also I considered Papa Bear because why not? Again, Papa Bear's kind of in that same sort of tier as like a Cowboy or a Dave Cruiser in terms of this like sort of wacky character from the pre-merge that would be fun to see return, but really no real chance of him ever returning. And for this cast, just simply didn't make the cut. But I did put on Jim Rice. I would love to see Jim Rice play again. Again, a travesty he wasn't on Second Chance. I personally voted for him. He's a great character. He's an interesting player. I think it would be fun to see him back. So now from One World, I didn't put anyone on, but I did consider Sabrina. And I did consider Jonas. I personally would love to see Jonas. I think Jonas is another one of these that's like a really great character and also a competent enough player, but didn't make the cut. From Philippines, I considered a few people. Considered Pete. I think Pete's kind of this dark horse in Survivor history. I feel like if he were to return, I very much could see him doing very, very well, but didn't make the cut. Didn't put Jeff Kent on as, I think it would be interesting, but I just didn't feel like there are other better options. Now from Karamoan, I actually considered a few people from Karamoan. I was actually surprised. There were actually 4 people from the fans tribe that I actually considered, but only one made the cut. I considered Laura. I think Laura's an underrated player. Didn't make it. I considered Matt and Michael. Both of them I think are pretty solid players. Both of them got kind of screwed over by the fact that it was fans versus favorites, but neither of them made the cut. The one I did put on, though, was Reynolds. I loved Reynolds on Karamoan. I thought he was a great character. He wasn't a good player, but I do think he had a really fascinating arc throughout that season. I would love to see Reynolds play again, especially now that he's married with kids and seems to be more willing to play this strategic game of Survivor. I think it would be really interesting to see him back again. He made my cut. From Blood vs. Water, I considered John Cody and I considered Hayden Moss. Both of them didn't make the cut. To be honest, I don't feel like I need either of them to be back again at this point. I mean, I think both of them are probably more likely returnees than like a Reynolds, or really, I mean, a lot of the people I've put on my cast, but in terms of like dream cast, I felt like neither of them really needed to be there. Now from Survivor, Cagayan, and there were a few people I considered here. A lot of pre-mergers, actually. The only non-pre-merger I considered was Trish. I think Trish would be really fun as a character. I think as a player, though, I don't really see her playing as dynamically as I would like, and that's why she didn't make the cut. I did consider Alexis, who I think had a lot of potential, didn't make the cut. Really, it was between her and Stephanie Valencia, and I went with Stephanie Valencia. Jatia is someone that I think was a great character, but didn't make the cut. I considered Cliff Robinson. He didn't make the cut, but the person I did put on was Bryce. I think Bryce, again, a travesty that he hasn't been brought back for Survivor, hasn't been asked back for Survivor. A travesty that he was taken out so early on that season. I think he could have been a massive all-star candidate if he did make it further into the game. He's just such a great character, but just seems to be overlooked by production for some reason. But again, on my cast, he made it on. On San Waldo Sur, I didn't put anyone on, but I did consider a few people. I considered John Mish, who I think is probably a likely returning. I believe he made my actual Second Chance cast. But in my dream cast, I just feel like there are other people I'd rather see back. I did consider Josh. I think Josh would be really fun as well, but again, didn't make the cut. And I did also consider Val, because I think that would just be funny, but again, didn't make the cut. From Worlds Apart, I considered 2 people, and they both made the cut here. I did put on Carolyn Rivera. And this is one of the more likely returnees, I feel like. I think Carolyn is, if they do a Second Chance too, I think she's 100% on that cast. And to be honest, I felt like by putting her on, it was kind of a waste of a spot. But, I mean, I think if I were to do Dreamcast, I do think she makes it on. I do think she is someone that I would genuinely like to see play again. I mean, like, if we're going for someone that's a bit less realistic, then, yeah, I would put, like, on, like, a Christine or a Holly Hoffman or a Shambo. But it's, like, realistically, if this is my dream cast, I do think I would rather see Carolyn back than those players. So I put Carolyn on, and the other person is someone that I don't think is ever going to return, but I would personally really like to see it, and that is Rodney. And I think Rodney was obviously a fantastic character on that season, but I think he was also a great player. I think seeing him return would be really fascinating, but it seems like production doesn't want him, and it doesn't seem like he even wants it either. So I don't think it's particularly likely to happen, but I would personally like to see it. Now from Co Wrong, I considered 4 people. 1 person made the cut. I considered Jason. I think Kyle Jason was a really fun character on that season. Again, someone that I would like to see play again, but it just didn't make the cut. There were just not enough spots. I considered Julia. I think Julia is someone that is another one of these in the kind of under the radar female spot to return that kind of I fulfilled with Stephanie Valencia in my eyes. I do think Julie's probably a more likely returnee than Stephanie Valencia, but again, this is my dream cast, so didn't put her on. And I did consider Nick Majorano. I think Nick Majorano would be really fun on a return, but Didn't make the cut. The person I did put on, though, was Sydney. I think Sydney's someone that played a really great game in Ko Wrong. I think seeing her return would be really fun. Though it seems like her return's kind of on hold until she's done with bodybuilding and other stuff. But I personally would like to see her back. She made my cut. Now moving on to Millennials vs. Gen X, I did consider a few people here. I considered Brett, I considered Jay, considered Michelle, and I considered Figgy. None of them made the cast for a multitude of reasons. To be honest, at this point, we're into the modern seasons of Survivor, and from this point forward, there's only 2 spots left, and I gave them both to people who I don't think are likely returnees at this point, but people that I would personally really like to see back, which means that there's going to be some pretty massive cuts moving forward. Speaking of that, we have HHH, where I have 7 contenders here. Only 1 made the cast, and that person might not be the person you're expecting. So I didn't put on Chrissy, even though I think she is a somewhat likely returnee. I would like to see Chrissy back again. Again, for me, it was Chrissy or Carolyn for that spot. I went with Carolyn, but I mean, I wouldn't mind a Chrissy return. Devin is someone I would love to see back again, and if I could make a cast of 40 or 30 or something, then yeah, Devin would be on. I just don't feel like Devin makes the cut, though he was pretty close to making it on. I considered Lauren Rimmer. Lauren Rimmer would be a lot of fun. She didn't make the cut. Didn't put on Joe. Didn't put on Jessica. Didn't put on Allie, even though I would like to see them all return. The person I put on was Alan Ball. I love Alan Ball. I mean, just rewatching HHH. Just rewatch those first few episodes. Alan Ball makes those first few episodes, especially the premiere and then his boot episode. I think he is a fantastic character and goes out in such a spectacular fashion that I would love to see how he would do on a return. I think he's a really out-of-the-box thinker and someone that plays the game way too hard for no real reason, but it would be amazing TV, and I would love to see Alan Ball back. He made my dream second chance cast. Then we move on to Ghost Island, where no one made the cut, though obviously I would love to see Dominic play again. I just feel like Dominic's going to play again. I don't need to put him on my dream cast. Considered Donathan, considered Kellen. Chris Noble was someone that was pretty close to making it on, though I feel like his spot on a return is on a Rivals cast with Dominic. He didn't really make my cut, just on a general second chance here. Bradley was someone I considered, didn't make the cut. Stephanie Johnson, someone that's never playing Survivor ever again, but I would like to see her back again, but she didn't make the cut either. And I did also consider Jacob Derwin, but didn't make the cut. Now for David vs. Goliath, and I surprisingly didn't put anyone on here either, even though I think if they were to be a second chance season right now, I think there would be a lot of David vs. Goliath people on there. I didn't put anyone on, and I was actually very surprised that I didn't get Angelina on the cast, because I really wanted Angelina there. But I just think when we're looking at the field, I just feel like Angelina is such a lock to return anyway, that yes, I could have swapped her out for Carolyn, or could have made it on instead of Sydney or a Tracy or something. But it's again, Angelina is going to be on an all-star season. She doesn't need to be on my dream cast here. Same thing goes for a Davey and a Christian and a Gabby and these people that I do feel are probably likely returnees. I did consider Alec. Alec was someone I really considered but just didn't make the cut. Same thing with John Hennigan. Allie Cole was someone I considered but didn't make the cut. Mike White. But it's really, again, I just feel it's either some of these people are going to be on a real all-star season, so it's why put them on my dream season, while others are just they just didn't make the cut because of the limited amount of spots. Now moving on to Edge of Extinction. This is where the final person on my cast is from. Let's talk about the people that didn't make the cut. I really considered Reem. I think Reem would have been funny, but again, didn't make the cut. I would have loved to see War Dog play again. I do think there's a chance that War Dog does play again, but he didn't make my cut. Same thing with Ron Clark. I would love to see Ron Clark play again, just not enough spots. Rick Devens, I think, is a lock to return anyway. He didn't need to be on my dream cast. Lauren O'Connell, I would love to see play again, but again, I think she has a chance of playing again. Probably a bigger chance than the person I did put on my cast, which is Victoria. I would love to see her play again. I think she played a really fascinating game. I think she was a very snarky character. I would love to see her on Survivor again. Do I think it'll happen? At this point, probably not. I was pretty confident after Edge of Extinction that we would see her again, but I do think as time has gone by, I do think her chances of returning are diminishing, and I just don't really see her being a returnee at this point, when there are so many other options, even from just Edge of Extinction. I feel like there are other options, so I don't feel like Victoria is a super likely returnee, but I would love to see her play again, so she made my dream cast. And that's the entire cast. We do still have IOI, which I didn't put anyone on, but let's just run through some people that I did consider. I did consider Dean. I think he would be fun on a return, but again, I just feel like there's a chance he's going to return anyway. Same thing with Nora, same thing with Lauren, same thing with Elaine, same thing with Jamal. All these people are people I could see playing again anyway. Kelly was someone I really considered because I would love to see her play again, obviously without the Dan stuff involved, to see her genuinely just play the game, and she was someone that was really close to making it on. And really, if you really want to, I mean, I could swap her out for like a Kelly Goldsmith or a Tracy Hughes Wolf, but really she didn't make the cut. And I also considered Chelsea Walker, but really I felt like there were better options. But there we go. That is my Dreamcasting Survivor Second Chance. So let's go through my Dreamcast here. We have Sean Rector, Ian Rosenberger, Judd Sargent, Shane Powers, Marty Piombo, Jim Rice, Ronald Toffler, Bryce Isaiah Johnson, Rodney Lavoie Jr., Alan Ball, T-Bird Cooper, Kelly Goldsmith, Julie Berry, Natalie Bolton, Tracy Hughes Wolf, Aaron, I believe Moss now, right? Stephanie Valencia, Carolyn Rivera, Sydney Gillen, and Victoria Baymonde. So that's my Dream Survivor Second Chance cast. So before we end the video, we might as well just go ahead and try to compare the two casts. This cast I did here and also the cast I did originally for my more realistic cast. And I mean, there's almost nothing similar about these two. And again, that was kind of intentional for the most part. I mean, I wanted to go with people that I felt like weren't going to return otherwise. I mean, there are a couple similarities. As I said, I mean, like, I thought Victoria was a likelihood at the time that I made that video. As time's gone on, I don't think that's as likely. So, I mean, Victoria's on both casts. I believe Marty is on both casts. Carolyn is on both casts. And Natalie Bolton is on both casts. So only 4 people are on both casts. And even then, like, I mean, my opinion on Victoria has changed since then. My opinion on Marty has changed since then. But yeah, I really love the cast I put together here. I think there's a lot of really fun characters. A lot of people that we won't ever see play again at this point. People like a Judd. People like a Jim Rice. People like a Alan Ball. People like a Shane Powers. People like a Rodney. I mean, we have some great players like Sydney and Ian and Julie and Tracy and just some people that I don't think we're going to see play again that I really would like to. So obviously it is more realistic to put some people like an Angelina and a Chrissy, a Christian, Davey, Dominic, Rick Devens, like those sort of people. It's like for my dream cast, it's like why waste those slots when we're going to have those people back again anyway. So overall, I am pretty content with the cast I was able to make here. But there we go. That is my dream casting video for Survivor Second Chance. So if we're going by tradition, I guess at this point, I guess next up will be Heroes versus Villains. So whenever I get around to that, stay tuned for that. And if we were to continue beyond that, I guess it would be what, Old School versus New School, and then Early Boots and Blood vs. Water 3 and that sort of stuff. So possibly stay tuned for those in the future. But for now, that is my dream cast for Survivor Second Chance 2. Thank you for watching.